MJF and William Regal on Dynamite had a segment that a lot of people were talking about. Did you get a chance to see at least that?
Yes, I did, because it was Wednesday night that I was sitting on the couch in the TV room, and Stace she'd turned the light out in the bedroom because she wanted to try to sleep. And I think the whatever it is, the steroids or whatever that causes the sleeplessness works more on me naturally because I'm a little wired upper anyway. So she's able to sleep a little more. So I'm trying to sit in a TV room. It's 8:00. I say, you know what? Danielson versus Dax. Certainly they'll lead with that. I knew I probably wasn't going to be able to make it to MJF because I was already, but I said, so I tuned in at 8:00, and instead of Danielson and Dax, I see Moxley walking through the crowd, and I see, I can't stomach this, feeling like this and looking at this guy to get to the match. I'll watch it tomorrow. So I felt even worse the next day, and there was no way I was going to subject myself to the whole program. That will happen on the Experience this weekend. We're not going to talk about everything in minute detail, but I do want to see and discuss Danielson and Dax, obviously. But I had to watch our boy. Shouldn't even call him our boy because that's disrespectful. Our new AEW World Champion, and the explanation, the presentation, whatever the fuck they're going to do. So that's what I watched, and we'll discuss it, but I think nobody can deny now that this was not the original plan, or even the original plan after CM Punk went down. Whether it was whether the media scrum had happened or not, he was still injured. But starting from that point where they knew, okay, we ain't gonna have Punk for 2 months or whatever the fuck, and whether or not he ever comes back, and we don't have it. But here's the AEW title picture we're going to start from right now. This thing is starting to remind me of when I used to book OVW in a reactionary basis based on John Laryngitis calling to tell me, okay, I know I thought you'd have this guy for 6 months, but we're taking him next week. Or, we're sending a guy down that you've never heard of. He'll be there tomorrow. Put him on TV Thursday. Or here's your top heel in the company. We've just debuted him as a preliminary babyface on SmackDown with no notice, or whatever the case. And that I would have to make adjustments. There's a lot of adjustments being made. And I don't think anybody can say that if they look at I'm not going to shit on what they did. This was the thing they should have done based on what is going on right now. So don't think I'm going to shit on this before we get to the details of it. But nobody can think that this is what they sat down 2 months ago or 10 weeks ago or whatever, said, we want to do this from week to week to week, and this is it. Do you see what it did? Am I delirious, or did you understand that?
No, and I actually just read some quotes from an interesting interview Stokely Hathaway did on, maybe it was Renee Paquette's show, and he said that the original plan coming out of the pay-per-view, out of All Out, I guess it was for them, the firm, to feud with CM Punk, because CM Punk specifically requested that he wanted to do something with Stokely because he liked Stokely. He thought there's something there. I think if you hear that, it's easy to read that also means it would have been Stokely, the firm, and MJF versus CM Punk.
Well, but I'm talking about after that as well. Once they determined there's going to be no Punk, what's our plan now? It's still not the same. This is literally, it's looking to me reactionary based on what the fuck is going on and who Tony is listening to from one week to another, and who they think is still going to be fucking around, and or who might not still be around, as we'll discuss. I don't think this is the coherent fucking line that they have been intending to do for the past 8 or 10 weeks. I think it's going back and forth. It's either that or they're all just crazy. I don't know. But it looks to me like what I was doing when I would hear from some outside force that I could not control, which Tony, there's plenty of them for Tony right now. Nope, I ain't going to do that. Or nope, you ain't going to have this guy. Or nope, yes, this guy's got to be involved or whatever the fuck. Because I'm just, somebody ought to write it down, synopsize it as they do in the television. But here's our show Bible. And tell this coherent linear story. Can you imagine that if they just took like the top 20 most used wrestlers or talents on AEW television and for 1 year said, here is their coherent linear story, and everybody would be fucking everybody's dog and goddamn, it'd be a fire drill.
Well, I don't know if they'll allow that on TBS, but what I was going to say is, in every way, you're right, except for actually the big overarching thing. The beginning and the end. That actually tied together. MJF confronting Regal with that email. This crushed me. I wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
I was a young wrestler. This is what you did to me. Feeding into Regal, wanting to see him do it clean. Gets Regal, turns on him. Ends it with him laying there. Gets stretchered out. Who the fuck gets stretchered out anymore? He gets stretchered out to say goodbye, to go back home to Connecticut, and MJF hits him with the email. That part made sense, and MJF's more evil than ever before because he did this just to screw this guy, who people actually liked for some reason.
Yeah, that that's one of a couple of perfect, that is the imperfect scenario. The problem, we got all of this other caca, and we got it in 2 weeks. Because now apparently Regal ain't gonna be there long, which you called, except the last week's exit that he made was a shitty way to go. But you said it does, in case he never comes back, that's his exit from television. And you were right. Who were you right about their exit? And we never saw him again about a year ago. Nevertheless.
Cody Rhodes?
Cody. So, but it would have been the shits. This was the way they should have done it, but they gave him 2 exits. But they also gave him 2 exits. If they had, I think this obviously puts a period on whether they got Regal for long or not, because if they had Regal for long, they would have left him with MJF so that they could establish themselves so that when MJF did that, it still would be so much better. But instead, they rushed through it. But then why was Regal there last week when all he did was stand there and he didn't speak? And we said, why is he a bump on a log? Was that just to placate?
That was to appease Moxley. That's exactly what that was.
Placate Moxley so he could at least tell him off to his face on TV before he left. Anyway, so obviously Regal comes out on the segment on television and, gives... And has heel heat, which this would be so good if Tony had not only had a real company, Pinocchio, but actually given Regal some important standing in it, not as an on-air person. I'm talking about to help run that fucking zoo. Maybe he would have wanted to stay even though, Triple Paul got back in power, but...
And we could talk all about Regal and all that afterwards, but you said something a few weeks ago about Moxley, and it was true. He had boo-boo face. I don't want to do the job face. Regal had that here, too.
Well, and I think a lot of this is obviously feeding off each other since it's the same social circle. But anyway, he brings MJF out, and it would have been a great combination, like I said, if all worlds had aligned. And MJF's promo there, he has heat back again, and he has his demeanor back again. He still has his partisans, obviously, but now they were pissed off that because at this point, part of them may be working with him, and part of them now are pissed off because now you've gone too far, blah, 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 whatever the fuck. But the point is, he gave as adequate and articulate an explanation tying all of these things together that you've mentioned as possibly, I think, could humanly, verbally be done on a wrestling program. I think he needs to lose the word disgusting. Get your dictionary of synonyms and antonyms, Maxwell. I had one by the time I was 22 years old. And, but, he's still, I thought, a little bit more on insulting the people. And we analyzed that in one of the shows we did a couple months ago. He is going to have to, again, heal himself to each town individually to fully become a heel, because they're seeing him. The people in Des Moines or Chicago or Indianapolis or whatever town he's in are seeing him for one or two times they'll see him live that year. So they're going to be up, but he shouldn't rely too much on that, because it becomes repetitive more easily for the television audience. They're not as digging it as much because they're not in the arena, in the environment. They're not being grouped in with the audience that is being insulted. And so they're sitting back watching it in a more detached fashion on the screen. And then it becomes more than, all the witty references in the world, boom, boom, because he's so quick, are welcomed. But when he just goes for the, you disgusting, poor, trench-mouthed individual or whatever, it becomes more repetitious on television. I think you should watch that, because this was a long segment anyway. But the point is, he made the explanation. They introduced the new BBB belt, the Big Burberry belt, which it didn't look, I can see it when they did the close-up of it, but farther back, it didn't look appreciably different from the other one, but I get the point.
When they first revealed it, you couldn't tell that it was anything other than just another version of the belt, and then they had to do the close-ups.
But close-ups are everything. But at that point, then as he's addressing Regal, he finishes the whole Zabada and walks around behind him, which it was kind of odd because Regal was all the way in the corner. And I was like, why is he walking over there to the turnbuckle? But then out of nowhere, boom, with the brass knucks. Oh, and the great line at the end where he said, you told me not to go for the diamond ring, but to go for the brass ring, and the little play on Vince's famous comment. And then boom, and he blasts him, and Regal goes down and I don't know how I felt about Regal laying there completely immobile for that long of a time, because as he goes down, then MJF finishes his promo kneeling beside him. It was a bit of a long bit at the end where MJF was talking so long that the doctor and or somebody should have been there. That doesn't mean hey, stand there with brass knucks in his fucking hand. It doesn't mean that the doctor has to, physically assault him, try to get him away, but it could have been good if they slid in and gave him some distance just to where there was some help arriving on the scene, because the time that was elapsed when he was squatting there talking to him, combined with Regal never moving on his own, I don't think ever, until the doctor and they turned him over and put him on the backboard. He got hit in the base of the skull with brass knuckles. Yes, he took a great bump and he laid there. Should there have been some, I don't know, even would a leg involuntarily move, or would there be a twitching of a hand or whatever? It was almost, I don't know. But nevertheless, then to my surprise and pleasure, they actually showed the backboard process, and they stayed with something. They let something happen rather than Oh my God, his head's just hit the ground after being cut off by a chainsaw. We'll be right back. They stayed with it until they got in the ring and they got him on the backboard and they wrapped his neck up and the announcers are making it a fairly grave situation or whatever. And as they're carrying him out, then they fade to black. So at least they had the discipline and the restraint to not just kill William Regal and then just go to black before the doctor ever even pronounced time of death.
So let's go back to last week with Moxley. What do you think that was? Do you think that's Moxley getting upset because he can't get his hands on Regal in an angle? Even though that's the guy he wants to work with the most, that it makes no sense because if he gets his hands on him before MJF does, it completely takes everything that MJF's about to do away from him.
Right. Well, exactly. Yes, obviously you couldn't have. That's why I was saying last week, why is Regal standing there taking his tongue lashing? They can't touch him. Makes Moxley look like an idiot. Danielson has to come out there and talk about how he found the love for his mother of his fathers through his brother that he never knew, or whatever the fuck that song and dance was that got Bryan Danielson moved out of the fucking building. And so instead of MJF and Regal both being on the movie set, yeah, and I have a VTR from it said we'll be there next week and tell you ignorant, sorry sons of snake feces what's up. Instead of that, he stands there and takes his tongue lashing and then walks off and turns Danielson heel, makes Moxley look like an idiot. The only had to because think about this for Moxley. And I had some people saying, oh, Moxley wouldn't have had boo-boo job face for dropping the world title to MJF because he already wanted to take time off. He was supposed to have a vacation. Number one, a fucking vacation from a 1 day a week job where you make 7 figures. Fuck you. I didn't ask for a goddamn 6-week vacation from a goddamn 7 day, 8 time a week job from Crockett where I was making a couple $100,000. Secondly, there's a difference between not getting to go on your vacation after you drop the title that you already knew you were going to drop, and after all of this, now he's got it again, and now that he ain't ready to fucking drop it. But the point is, again, Moxley's caught in the middle of this thing because this was not a coherent story from start to finish. And it hasn't been even since Punk and the media scrum and his injury where they knew one way or another he wasn't going to be around. It's been back and forth. And Moxley, I think, as I've said, thinks he probably might have been the one to carry this thing, maybe. You could tell kind of for a couple of weeks there he was getting a little saucy. But it doesn't make sense unless Moxley just wanted to come out and tell fucking William Regal off to his face because elsewise he got turned on by this whole Blackpool Combat Club nonsense. He got turned on by a guy that then was going to get turned on by the guy that he got turned on for. This sounds like the fucking plot of a gay porn film. But there would have been no MJF beating or brain damaging William Regal on this program if it had. And now PW Insiders come out and said that the rumors are strong. Tony Khan won't comment, but that Regal is WWE bound. And right now it's the first part of December, and he only signed a contract 9 months ago. So even if he signed a 1-year contract, it wouldn't be up this soon unless he was just asking, yeah, but please, can I check, please? Can I just leave?
I want to go home. Please let me go home.
Home and be alone. So yes, Moxley should have, in a perfect wrestling world, it makes total sense for Moxley at some point to have gotten his hands on William Regal and committed physical mayhem. But it didn't make sense in what they're doing now for anybody to get him except MJF But it doesn't make sense what they did now unless William Regal is being let out of his contract to go back to the WWE earlier than they apparently assumed when they signed him that he would be. Have I summarized and synopsized that in a appropriate manner for a person on drugs?
Yes, and I'll do my best to be on drugs with you after the next break. But let me
that way you got to get sick first. You can't just willy-nilly just do some drugs.
I'm in mourning. But listen, let's talk about William Regal. Let's talk about his run in AEW for a moment here, because it's pretty interesting. He gets there, I think, in January. It was the end of last year, early this year.
I think somebody said, wasn't it almost March when he debuted? I saw somebody on Twitter or something say that.
Well, we'll check, but it was early this year. It wasn't like he was there a long time. We heard that he was someone that people like Danielson and Moxley really wanted to have there. They pushed him to Tony. Tony brings him in. They create this Blackpool Combat Club. He starts doing commentary during their matches. He's not at ringside, he's on commentary. They really don't do too much that matters, the Blackpool Combat Club. He doesn't get involved in too much. They don't really act like a traditional faction. It's just matches every now and then with other people. And then this MJF stuff, which kind of came out of, again, the fallout of CM Punk being gone. At what point did he tell Tony Khan he wanted to go back to WWE? That's the interesting thing, because he hasn't been there a long time. He's witnessed a lot of drama there. At what point did he say, you know what, I want to go back? And then the question is, after that point, why did they use him the way they did? And how is that responsible? Especially if you can't get a full payoff. Moxley will never get his hands on him now unless he goes back to WWE. So that's irresponsible. When did Tony know? And also, if he indeed, and this contract situation's up in the air. No one knows if it's a 1-year deal, a 3-year deal. And if in either case, it's just Tony being a nice guy and letting him out of the contract to make other people happy. But what kind of precedent does that set for a Malachi Black, for a Miro, for an Andrade, for anyone else who may or may not have previously requested their release and not gotten it?
Well, with the precedent, I mean, there's going to be ways that either people can justify it to Tony or Tony can justify it to other people. Well, William Regal wasn't a wrestler, and and they wanted him in an office position, and something that we couldn't provide here, and out of respect for him, and there's validity to that stuff. Where Tony can say, I can't just let every active wrestler on my roster, no matter what their status, ask for a release and be free. But there's ways you can justify it or phrase it. And the point is also that it was Vince's WWE regime that fucked up and let a lot of these guys go to begin with that would never have probably particularly gone to or appeared with or dealt with AEW had they not been let go. But I think the biggest probably thing that he can justify it to a lot of these guys is respect for Regal and his age at this point. It's not like he wants to work till he's 75, I wouldn't think. So, and everybody knows that he's been close and been an important person with Triple H. But then again, that's also one of the things we talked about. I'm not saying William Regal's a dishonorable person or an industrial, espionage agent or either an undercover agent for the FBI sent down here to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. What I'm saying is that he knows now and has talked to and knows the talents of and the strong points and weaknesses of and the professionalism or lack therein of everybody in that locker room at this point, and he will be working closely alongside the fucking head of the biggest wrestling promotion in the world. So happy days are here again. And
the booking of William Regal.
That's it. You and Tony Schiavone both made the same mistake.
But his booking, let's just say since the spring, how can you justify it now with the idea that at some point, because I heard he was going back at least 2.5 months ago, So at some point before that, they knew he was going back.
And so I don't have his timeline in front of me. And that's the problem is you can't, here's the thing, a problem that Tony would have that anybody would have. You can't hire somebody and then be afraid to use them and make them important and or more of an attraction or whatever on a program because you're afraid that then they'll turn around and leave and go back. Because then you're hiring people and not using them to their fullest potential. Having said that, if this was with me, if this had been a 3-year contract and he had been asking a couple months ago, I would, then we'd probably had to work something out because you don't want a guy, especially of Regal standing, that doesn't want to be there as being held against his will. And that's another thing. Younger wrestlers, or at least wrestlers is still active on a full-time basis, they can understand better being held against their will than, a guy like Regal. But if it was a 1-year contract, I would have had to say to his lordship, suck it up, Buttercup. You got to stay with me for a year because I signed you for a year and I will, feature you and do whatever they can, but let's do this program with MJF or whatever. And then the culmination can be him laying you out and off we go. But, and I don't know, maybe Regal's put pressure on him because they're putting pressure on Regal from the North Pole up there. So I don't know. If it was just a 1-year deal, I would have thought, Jesus Christ, there's only a few more months, but maybe there's more to the story. I don't know what the fuck Tony thinks about his booking. But that's why I've just said over the past 3, I know they've had a lot of turmoil, but there's a lot of this shit that doesn't stem off the Punk and or EVPs being gone. Even if they were still around, if everybody else was going to be in the same place as they thought they were 2 months ago, they wouldn't have gone through all these fucking hoops and hollers and chutes and ladders.
Well, I want to ask you some follow-ups about MJF, but first, on the topic of MJF, of course, he just had his big title win in Newark, New Jersey, and besides the fact that it was in Newark, I'm sure it was a big night for him and his family, perhaps one they could celebrate with multiple photos on a Skylight frame.
Well, you just jumped right into it, didn't you? I'm still scrolling. But I'll tell you what, right now, folks, holidays are just around the corner. I think we mentioned that. How many corners are we going to have in this show? I'm like a rat trying to find a corner in a silo. If you're looking for a good gift idea that your parents or in-laws will genuinely love, if they're your in-laws, give them the fucking finger. How about they'll love that?
No, we want to celebrate the in-laws with this spot here today.
Not the in-law that gave me and Stacy this fucking flu. But
well, it wasn't your in-laws.
Well, it was an in-law. That's all I know. Or the mother-in-law. Well, I've never met a mother like that. Anyway, we want to welcome them back, though. Our friends at Skylight Frames, they've been away for a while. They were abducted by aliens, subject to probing, and then now they're back. But they've been one of our most popular sponsors on the program here over the past several holiday seasons. And the deal on this thing, I won't even make fun of it because the new fans and new listeners may not even remember what the heck it does to begin with for real. But the Skylight frame is a photo frame that it's a beautiful designer frame you can display in your home. If you don't live in a home, then whatever, public or state facility you live in, whether it's a prison or, institution or
you can display it wherever there's electricity.
Well, yes, but especially it's good for, in your home. Well, some people live in state homes, some don't. I'm just saying. But you display this photo frame, but it doesn't just hold a picture. It doesn't just have a physical picture in it. It sets up and you connect it to the wireless network, that Wi-Fi that we hear about. There's a touch screen involved, and it's real easy. And you just, boom, you turn it on, and you can send photos. Everybody can. Everybody in the family that has the information. I don't think anybody's hacked it yet to send a picture of their sphincter to Gladys in Cleveland or whatever. But if you give the
Don't know why we had to go there.
Ideas?
Don't know why we had to go there. No, don't give people that idea. No.
Well, anyway, everybody in the family that you give the information to that can be a part of this can email pictures to this Skylight frame, and they pop up in seconds. And multiple people can send photos, and then you got the slideshow going on. See, right? Don't you see? And it's a black frame and a white mat, so it looks like a real photo frame, and is beautiful, and decorator and designer and all that good stuff. And it's got a touch screen, and you can swipe through the photos, and you can contact the beloved family members and close personal friends and sexual partners, whoever that sends you these things. You can tap them to let them know that you love them, or possibly you can give a thumbs down. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever done that.
I don't know if there's a thumbs down. I think you can just display love with Skylight frame, considering you're just giving the link to people you love.
Well, whichever thumb or finger you want to give somebody, you can give it to them with a Skylight frame, and now you can choose from 2 size options. This is a new thing that has not been done before. Either the original 10-inch, that's not to be confused with the Aerosmith big 12-inch, but the original 10-inch, or the new large 15-inch frame. So that's 2 options to choose from. The 15-inch, imagine what your family's pictures will look like. I bet your mother-in-law looks like she's on a drive-in movie screen. Anyway, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you do not love your Skylight, they'll offer you a full refund. That not a Skylight they'll put into the roof of your home, but the Skylight frame. You can preload it with pictures and send it to people, or you can suck those pictures in off the interwebs as they come in, or you want to send them of anybody or anything. Candid photography right now, folks. You can get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame, or I assume more than one if you'd like to stock up, when you go to skylightframe.com and enter the code DRIVE. That's SKYLIGHT, skylightframe.com. Enter the code DRIVE, $15 off with the promo code DRIVE. Spread love, joy, cheer, happiness, but not germs for the holidays. Let's get to the AEW, folks. You want to do that? Talk about the AEW. Talk about the AEW over there. We mentioned something about her. We did some of it on the Drive-Thru because I couldn't wait to see the MJF and Regal segment. So we talked about that from this past Wednesday night's Dynamite on the Drive-Thru. But there was a couple other things on the program, including Danielson and Dax. But what am I hearing now? We've already talked about William Regal and his short-lived fucking association with MJF, and how this whole thing has fallen apart. There was not a clear linear story told. I know they're going to try to blame it on, well, we didn't know Punk was going to be gone. And even if he hadn't been gone because of the media scrum, he would have been out with an injury. Yes, but then they've been going back and forth and changing this shit since then. And now suddenly William Regal has turned on the Blackpool Combat Club and allowed MJF to win the AEW World title, starting a long reign of MJF and Regal, a reign of terror as the Heenan and Bockwinkel combination that lasted a grand total of 10 days and 1 television appearance, until MJF then knocked Regal out and fucking left him laying. And we mentioned at the time, and I guess time will tell. Who was it that wrote that classic lyric? Only time will tell if we'll stand the test of time. Time will tell, but it's looking ever more like that we were correct, Brian, when we said that they are trying desperately to figure out a way to hurry up and write William Regal out of this dramedy that they got going on to get him out of there. And it's being reported, Tony Khan won't comment on it, but it's being reported in a variety of places that Regal is anxious to go back and work for his friend Paul, which we obviously have said that there's no way that Regal would have been fired last year if Paul had been in charge instead of Vince. And now EC3, who has worked with Regal in the past, as you know, in Regal's job is, important job in developmental and NXT. And EC3 has made comments to the effect that he believes that Regal had buyer's remorse on that contract and he's trying to get the fuck out of Dodge. Do you have those comments that he claims Mr. Regal made?
I have it here. Apparently EC3 did an interview. It's nice to know that the Carter family name has continued on in wrestling. Here's the quote. He's too valuable to not be in a developmental system. I know we could say, oh, he's there mentoring the people in AEW. The thing is, they're not listening. The talent doesn't listen to the veterans for the most part. When he went over to AEW, the word was, he said, I immediately regret this decision. There's very much a maturity issue here within management. And that's the end of the quote.
So, let's see now, that JR gave advice and was publicly ridiculed on Twitter and on social media by the young folks over there for trying to give advice. Punk said, well, nobody wants to listen to anybody's advice. Old Hangnail actually came out and said, no, I don't look for or listen to much advice. We've heard that, I don't know who made the comment, but I've heard Billy Gunn shakes his head a lot at why the fuck won't they listen to me?
I think Road Dogg made that comment.
Road Dogg made that comment. Do you think there might be something to this?
And I think it's more than talent. We're talking about management too.
Well, he did say, or according to EC3, Regal said there was a maturity issue with management. A maturity issue with management, almost like that the people at the actual top of the company have never done any of this before, but yet won't take advice from people who have. It's almost like that. But that can't be right, because that's what we've been saying for quite some fucking time now, is it not? And of course, we're never right. That's what a lot of people on the internet say, until it comes out that we turn out to be right and things happen that we said were going to happen. And they got lucky. So
he's talking about Tony, though, too. I mean, you're just really talking about talent.
No, I'm talking about Tony.
Okay.
The people at the very top of this company have never done. I'm talking about Megan. She's supposed to, wake up yourself. She's supposedly number 2, right?
Yes.
She's under Tony. Well, I don't know what goes on after hours.
No, I wouldn't say that. Not Tony.
But she, at the same point, she's number 2. Well, I don't want to categorize her with...
Tony has called her the number 2 person in the company.
She's the number 2 person in the company.
In terms of corporate structure, yeah.
Okay, well, she's never been to a goddamn wrestling match for fucking 6 months, probably before that goddamn company was founded. So Tony's never done any of the shit that he's trying to do before in his life, except, as we know now from his public comments, with his 2 other E-Fed friends, where they would book their E-Federation for each other. And it was amazing how that even though the fans in the arenas weren't real, they could get the feel of what was getting over. And by the way, we didn't make this one point when we talked about that clip also, but Tony mentioned starting the E-Fed for Wednesday Night Dynamite in 1995. I guess he was like 14 or 15 years old, right?
A little bit younger than that, because I was 14 or 15 in 94, 95, so he's younger than me.
Okay, 12 or 13 or whatever the case. And then he mentioned he followed it up with Friday Night Dynamite in 2010. He would have been almost 30. He started a second E-Fed because there was such demand.
Well, give him credit as a promoter. He didn't rush the second show. I'm sure there was a lot of pressure from the network saying, Dynamite has been such a hit for almost 20 years now. We want a second show. Took him a while.
Well, anyway.
Responsible.
So, anyway, you know, the whole thing, he had all that free time since he wasn't going out on dates, apparently. If he did, he was coming home from the date after he told his girl that he was booking an E-Fed. But Tony hadn't done any of this before. Megan, what is her name? I can't even remember what her name is.
Mega Parikh.
Mega, or is it Mega?
It's Mega.
Or is it Migo?
It's not Migo. The worst figures ever. Go?
Back when the rains came, down in a hollow, playing a new game. None of these people. And then you got the EVPs who have done what they allege is wrestling, but have never EV'd any Ps. The guy in charge of the video game, I understand I don't know anything about video games, but I understand from people who do know a lot about video games that this thing's taken a long time. And he put the love child of Richard Simmons and Leo Sayer in charge of a $100 million project. So the point is, everybody is making up for their complete lack of experience over there by not listening to anybody that has any. And the TV show looked like it. As I mentioned, we already talked about the MJF and Regal segment and controversy, etc. There were a couple other things on this program. I'm not going to go into excruciating detail on most of it. But I mentioned I was sick on the couch, and I would turn the TV on at 8 o'clock to see if I'd see Danielson and Dax, because I figure, okay, they'll put Danielson out there first, try to keep the big bangers, right? Because that's the only way they can get a banger on the AEW program is if they keep it from the previous program. But here comes Moxley, so I tuned back in later. Apparently, this was the in-ring promo with Moxley that now that he's been made to look like a complete fucking putz by everybody, his fucking mentor turned on him. His good friend and partner Bryan Danielson last week kept him from killing Regal in storyline because Danielson loves Regal, and in actuality because obviously Moxley couldn't get his hands on the guy that turned on him and fucked him and knew apparently what we think now that he never was going to, because Regal's on his way out. So he had to at least give him a verbal tongue lashing on the way out. That was last week. So now this is Moxley's promo where he comes out and again talks about what a badass he is and how he's going to run this whole place and blah, blah, blah. He said there were 3 certainties: death, taxes, and John Moxley. And all 3 of those have the same appeal to the viewer.
It was a weird expression, wasn't it?
Well, Mama Cornette used to say there's only 2 things for sure, and that's death and taxes.
And John Moxley. But what does that mean?
Moxley's trying to, yeah.
I have to pay my taxes. Unfortunately, we all die. But how does Moxley fit into that equation? He'll just always be there no matter what.
He'll always be. Well, and apparently with that new long-term contract that he's signed, and his wife's got a job there, so he doesn't even have to go home to visit her. So anyway, he's still trying to be a badass, and he claims that there's not a man within 100 miles with the balls to tell him different. And of course, they play music at the perfect cue, and it is Hangnail Adam Page's music. And oh my God, here we go. Now, 2 more baby faces are going to fight to see who's going to be the fucking #1 contender to the world title. He comes out in his cowboy outfit. Did you see that ensemble that Page was wearing this week, Brian Last?
Can't really call it a cowboy outfit. It's more like a guy lives in Brooklyn and there's a cowboy-themed bar down the street that they all hang out at.
It's like he told his wife to go to Cox's and get him a seersucker suit. She got mixed up and went to Sears instead. And there is Hangnail Page in the ring, face-to-face and toe-to-toe with a homeless plumber. It looked like The representatives of a showdown between a pride parade and a coalition of the fucking underprivileged. I've never seen, maybe in the 50s when Nudie started making the cowboy outfits with the rhinestones and the appliques, maybe Page, and nevertheless, anyway, Moxley's like, you sure you want to do this? And Page nailed him, and they had a big fight, and they went to the floor, and security, and referees, and a big pull apart, and a bunch of break looses. And Page looks ridiculous visually, the way he dresses, and he has no personality whatsoever besides the empty-headed twit that he apparently is. But he gave this everything he had. And if you didn't see 3 or 4 of these bench clearing brawls in every week's program, this was a good one. They were fighting and the people were in it, yeah, because they'd break loose and then they get pulled apart and they'd break, and people thought it was over and then they'd break loose. That's the idea of the break looses, they think they've got it settled down and it's a big pop because the guy breaks loose. But on one of the break looses, all the people had drugged Page up to the stage, and Moxley runs up the stage after him, and he's coming 100 miles an hour, and you can hear the people getting up like, yeah! And then Moxley tries to run past the cameraman that's got his back to him and past another guy, and ran straight off the side of the stage and busted his fucking ass face first, and the people went, hell! Everybody in the building, so even the announcers had to say, oh my God, and Moxley's falling. I hope he's okay. And it would just, but all I could think, again, who's the baby face? Are we going to, because Moxley is too, I think, convinced that he is a superstar to want to switch heel right now and tell all the fans, fuck you, after he just lost the title that he's just lost fucking 3 times in the last 2 months or whatever, this goddamn booking and the whole fiasco of the thing. Is Page going to be a heel? He couldn't be any worse heel than he is a babyface, but that's faint praise. Or are they just going to have 2 guys? Because Tony, I wonder if the 2 guys that he booked the E-Feds with, I wonder if that's still his crowd that he's listening to. Because it sure ain't the fucking people in his buildings.
Well, he may be listening to an internet crowd, but I'm not sure if it's just confined to that.
But if so this is going to be Page and Moxley now. Okay, diminish both guys. You're going to have to pick somebody to be behind, or you're just going to say, fuck it, I'll wash my hands of the whole thing. So if you're behind one of them, then you're against the other one, and that means that he's turning people against one of his baby faces.
After we saw the stuff with MJF and the crowd reaction to Moxley in a few different places, and Moxley's reaction to the crowd not being with him, I'm actually thinking he should be a heel right now.
I'm not saying he shouldn't, but I don't think that he's going to be. And how are we going to tell? Let's see. Usually it's the heel that is the cheater and the badass and the guy that drinks blood.
That's how
blood.
Bad he is. He drinks blow.
Well, he drinks blood and breaks bones and he does all this, and that's who Moxley is as a babyface. The heel is supposed to be like that as a heel, and then we switch his babyface, then the idea is they'll see this type of reckless, devil-may-care behavior against the other heels. But Moxley cannot change in any way the way that he wrestles or talks or approaches anything, because he's never either a babyface or a heel. He's a delusional, not very impressive visually looking guy nearing 40 that talks a big game, and for the modern day, with a lack of real fucking badasses in the wrestling business, he can get away with it with some people. But I don't know. So we're going to have to watch those 2 go at each other now.
All things considered, though, I actually thought it was a pretty good opening segment. And, I get what you're saying. We see a lot of things, but we also do complain pretty regularly about the fact that guys go out there, brawl, and there's no one out there to break things up. There are no referees. There's no backstage people.
No, the fight they did well.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it with 2 whole completely different people. But the fight segment, that was fine. But again, then they need consistency. Now they've established they've got referees and security guys that will come out and break up shit that gets out of hand, except if they don't like the people that are involved. Nobody wants to see Page and Moxley get hurt, so we'll go out and break them up. But when it's the trampoline cowboys and their completely rule-free shit, then they get to fight or the sports entertainment assholes, they get to fight and do whatever, and chainsaws and sledgehammers to people's heads and everything, and nobody tries to stop it because that would break up the flow of their dramatic presentation. But then you've got a schizophrenic television program where, well, they just came out and broke the other thing up. And then they don't even apply a series of standards to that. Girls will slap each other and get in a hair pulling fight, and they'll send 20 people out there. But there's the guy with the fucking flaming fucking welding torch and nuclear plutonium he's trying to cover a guy up with, and we can't go out there.
Hey, but with Moxley, and we're not fans of Moxley, but we acknowledge what he means to some of their fans, and I don't know if he means as much now as he did months back, but what do you do with him now? He's not going to get his hands on Regal, that's over, so there's nothing to do with that. It seems like they're gearing up for MJF and Danielson. You would think that means he's not in that equation, hopefully not a three-way, even though there's something natural there with him and Danielson, and he'll hopefully never get a rematch with MJF because that was a horrible Moxley match.
Horrible match.
But what do you do with Moxley now?
You have a standby off-ramp for him. And again, this is kind of the gist of it. He needs to get involved with somebody else so that he doesn't look weird or bad for not going after MJF or getting an immediate rematch or whatever with MJF for his title. But it needs to be somebody that he can rehabilitate his own image with. For example, as soon now as he has been made to look like a complete simpleton, besides by Mother Nature, Moxley, because his mentor turned on him, the head of the Blackpool Combat Club, and he lost the world title and a blah, blah, blah. That's where you should have an up-and-coming young heel ready to piss in his post-toasties as soon as he comes out and says, I got jobbed by Regal and this and that and the other thing, and gives his side of the story, and I'm coming back at MJF. Then there should be somebody else standing by that wants to piss on him and or already has pissed on him and or says, no, I need to be the number one contender. And you run him off with it, especially with Moxley standing at this point. If he's going to be around for a few more years, he's as over as he's ever been. And he's as over as he's ever going to be. Actually, he's probably not now as over as he's ever been, but he's still as over as he's ever going to be.
Right.
It's not like suddenly, after 2 years of coming off WWF television and the run he's had, he's ever going to be any better over, more popular in AEW. So now's the time, okay, get a guy that's on the ascent, a young heel, to go in there and have a program. And Moxley could probably win some or most of those, as long as you keep the young heel credible, but it'll make that guy a step up the ladder working with the ex-world champion. And as a matter of fact, Moxley should go back after MJF, and that heel that I was just speaking of that doesn't exist because now it's Hangnail Adam Page, he should be the one to fuck Moxley in his either out of a rematch or in his rematch. But the time to have planned all that was before the guy dropped the title. Remember, I've said the whole reason for Kane's placement debuting in the Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood was because The Undertaker was not going to beat Shawn Michaels and become the WWF champion. And he was also not scheduled to have any rematches because that program had run its course and we were going in different directions, Shawn and Brett and Taker and Kane eventually. But you can't just beat The Undertaker and give him no rebuttal, and at the same time, he's a big pussy and just quits trying for it. No. You interjected Kane because that way Michaels retains, Undertaker's been defeated, but what's more important to Undertaker mentally and his motivation than going back to get even with Shawn Michaels for not winning the title is to go ahead and get even with Kane for the defeat, for the causing the defeat, and for the humiliation, etc. Now, Undertaker has had a graceful exit away from Shawn Michaels where the fans aren't sitting there going, well, he just got beat and quit trying. That's the way you segue a top guy off. You can't just say after he's lost the title and the media scrum's over with, okay, well, what's he going to do now? That should already be figured out. And if this was what they figured out for it to be, blah. They're rewarding Page again for pretty much starting this whole goddamn fiasco. He's worthless as an attraction to begin with because the only people at this point that want to see that bland, boring-ass, hang-dogged imitation cowboy face are the same people that want to see the EVPs, which is shrinking by the week. It's the whole clown club. Page was the biggest disappointment that they've had as a world champion, and he's added nothing to make himself any more interesting. Just that droop dog expression he comes out with on his face. What were you going to say?
And that's a whole nother discussion. What do you do with Adam Page if you are going to keep him right now? Because you do need some guys that you could at least get near the top. But going back to Moxley,
you can't even turn Page heel because he's so bland and disinteresting. He couldn't be a cool heel that
he can only be a face. I agree.
Well, I don't know if he can be a face either. As the old line in the wrestling business, guy would come up to a rookie and say, son, I've seen you. There's only two things you can't do in this business. What's that, sir? One's heel and the other one's babyface. But nobody would think that Page is a slick personality, a heel. I can see, they were from only about 150 miles apart. I could see Adam Page trying to act like Buddy Landell.
No, he's a school teacher playing wrestler. But let's get back to Moxley. Because you said that, you're talking about Kane and The Undertaker. It was set up so you don't really think about the fact that The Undertaker lost, but The Undertaker lost.
Right.
Beyond Regal helping MJF and in doing so turning on Moxley, should they have had something else there that night? Whether it's Claudio and Yuta also going against Moxley, although you wouldn't really want to muddy up the MJF stuff, but it gives Moxley something coming out of that, like, fuck Blackpool Combat Club, I created it, and these guys are ingrates, I'm going to kick their ass, whatever it may be. And by the way, it may make Claudio more interesting too, but do you need something that night? And I'm not saying it has to be Claudio. Do you need something that night for Moxley or the next Wednesday? What would you have done?
Not in this instance, because Shawn Michaels didn't need to be any more over at that point. He didn't need to beat The Undertaker through his own cheating or lying or manipulating or healing or whatever. He was already over too. MJF needed to beat Moxley, and the only other person involved needed to be Regal to tell this story. Now, of course, the story's never going to get to go anywhere because Regal can't stomach being there any longer, and they're going to fucking lose him. But that was the right thing to do there. But could there not have already been some conflict with Moxley and somebody, even just verbally over the previous few weeks, that made it look like something natural, a natural extension of the happenings, when Moxley comes out and starts campaigning for a fucking rematch and let this other heel come in and fucking piss on him to give him something else, another direction to want to go and something else to want to do. And then if it was, maybe even it's even a guy like the other Page, you say you like him. I think he's another fucking joke, but he's a good-looking athlete if he hadn't done stupid, silly wrestling shit to show where in the past to show where his fucking head's at. He's a decent-looking athlete. He's got some size. Maybe they could try to start getting something out of him, and he's got a manager, Stokely. and the manager could fuck with Moxley. Something like that, instead of just, oh, God, here comes Page again. Just Adam Page is the most uninteresting motherfucker in the history of the world. I don't know. Would you like to move on?
Yes.
Because there's really one other match we're going to talk about, and then I've got to see if you watch something. But Dax and Danielson. And this was for 20 minutes. And they do this every once in a while. But for 20 minutes, this television program looked like the Major League Wrestling show. Not only did it have a personality that people have seen in the WWE, that has been the champion, that is known around the world, Bryan Danielson, that's in great shape and can go and is serious. But Dax, who is, as I've mentioned the other day, sometimes we forget about him because he and FTR are so hidden here because of the jealousy of the EVPs. But Dax is the best worker on the roster. In the ring, tag team, single, heel, babyface, anybody. He's the best. And to be honest, if we got to see Cash ever have a singles match, he'd probably be right close. But has everybody seen how ridiculous this is at this point? Where Dax loses singles matches to everybody in the company, while at the same time, they're the best wrestling match you've seen since the last time that Dax had a singles match, but he's never won one. And Cash never gets to work at all in a singles match. Every once in a while, they have a tag team match together, but most of the time in AEW, it's a 6-man or an 8-man or an underneath match or a pre-taped interview. They have all their great tag team matches in other companies somewhere else in the world. They got every other company's tag team title that means something in those companies, but are completely meaningless in this environment. And the apologists are still acting like that this is not intentional, that anybody could be so stupid that they get talent on their roster that start earning standing ovations from the crowd just for making their entrance, and people are still trying to say they're not being held down on purpose. And I got news for you. Yes, the rule of thumb in wrestling. And a lot of these things are repeated to people like Tony with no experience, or people like some of these younger wrestlers with no frame of reference or context to how to take these things. Well, singles guys always beat tag team guys, but tag team guys would beat two single guys in a tag team match because they're tag team specialists. Within a point, you are true, all things being equal. That's why Ric Flair beat Bobby Eaton, right? But at the same time, Bobby Eaton didn't get beaten in every single match he ever had, or did Stan Lane or Dennis Condrey. They still beat everybody but the main event fucking baby faces if they were in a single match. And then if they were in a single match, it was part of their program. It was Bobby versus Ricky Morton, or Stan versus Robert Gibson. Or Dusty used to break the midnight up every once in a while to go after the U.S. heavyweight title. Yes, they would do a job to Dusty Rhodes or Nikita Koloff. But I think you would probably find, if you did the record books, that the Midnight Express, whenever they had a singles match on television, won 90% of them, and then did the occasional job in a title match. And it's the same way with, you can't do this way and expect anybody to take your tag team champions seriously. Or your top tag team, since they're not the champions, because the Bucks ran out on putting the belts on them. So the crowd was chanting, "This is awesome," before the lockup of a guy who only gets to do jobs on this television program intermittently, Dax Harwood. The level of professionalism from both these guys, from bell to bell, was higher than most of the people in AEW can match on their best day. I had one complaint about the match, and you called it. Dax hit a beautiful pile driver, covered him, and got a 2 count. And besides there actually being no heel in this match, because people love Bryan Danielson and people love FTR, so why book it? Oh, I know why to book it. Because a Mark booking in his basement for an E-Fed would think that it would be cool to have this great wrestling match on their imitation fictitious television program. There's no business reason to have this. Bryan Danielson didn't get any more over, and Dax certainly didn't. And yes, you're trying to get ratings on television, so give them a good match. Well, then how about every once in a while, whoever's in a program with FTR or Danielson, they run out and cause a disqualification to further your goddamn issue and try to make money with it. Oh, I forgot. Neither of these guys is in a program because none of Tony Khan's main event guys are in programs and rivalries. They just intermittently wrestle people for no fucking reason. So if there were about 10 other guys in this company that could work like these two guys, they would look like the better wrestling show over WWE easily, even with the production difference in production values. But they had a great back and forth match. People were with it. They loved everything. Finally, Dax got a sharpshooter and pulled on the knee pad, got a little subtle heel advantage. And then they went into a series of jackknife false finishes, back and forth, boom, boom, boom. And out of nowhere, Danielson got the label lock and Dax tapped out in a finished. I've never seen a match that good and professional to have a finish that fucking flat. Just grabbed a hold on him and he tapped out. There's, again, no build, no edge of your seat roller coaster ride. It was some roll-ups. They tried. But this is what modern wrestling is, because everybody has to either have a heel versus heel match or a babyface versus babyface match. They're afraid of a disqualification to actually try to increase their business. Everybody's afraid of getting beat and looking weak, so they suffer through 87 million big moves and then get beat with a sunset flip. And the finish comes out of nowhere because reasons. I don't know why. And then both guys shook hands and hugged. What'd you think, Brian?
You kind of hit on some of my biggest issues with the overall concept of the match. As a match itself, it was good.
If I had 50 of the hottest young prospects in wrestling at a training seminar, then I would send these two guys in the ring in front of that audience, professionals, to say, this is an example of something you should aspire to. Put it on television to increase my business. I don't see how it did.
You brought it up with Dax. Dax never cashed. Dax always has these singles matches. He never wins any of them, but we all go into them with the same feeling. Oh, this is going to be a great match because Dax is in it. And every time, technically, it's a great match. But not one person watched that match and didn't know that Danielson was going to win.
Right.
And that's the problem. And again, if you're going to use Dax and Cash is there, unless Cash has a hernia or something we don't know about, have them in a fucking tag match.
No, he walked out in street clothes on the ramp and shook Dax's hand and then went back inside and we never saw him again.
If this match was booked just to get that crowd reaction, because I can't think you book a match like this and think, oh, this match with no background other than the two great wrestlers will get people really to tune in. Put FTR in a tag match. They bring the house down everywhere they go, but we don't get that.
This match was to please the choir. They were already there. This match was great for the people that were already going to watch this program, the people are already in the building. But it was neither built or enough import was not invested in it or any story whatsoever or anything to make anybody that didn't already just want it like us. Oh, gosh, we'll actually get to see two guys that can work on this program. That's the only reason we were up in arms to watch it. How many people felt that way?
Hey, I'll tell you what, I don't think they should have Danielson wrestle on TV for a while. If they're going to do something with him and MJF, it's the perfect time to take a break from the formula so he can get on the mic, joust back and forth with MJF. Who knows what they'll argue about. It'll probably be something other than Regal just to make everyone forget about Regal. There has to be something there. Danielson was getting really good on the mic as a heel about a year ago. So I don't think they should have Daniel. I think we've seen him wrestle too much on TV in meaningless matches.
You know what? There's something. What about since the knock on MJF and Moxley was like, well, he never wrestles. And MJF says, because when I do, you got to pay for it. What about if Danielson was to try to do the same thing? Well, I don't need to wrestle either. And I'm going to be in great shape. Nobody's going to tell you. We see videos of Danielson just not only training, but also just resting and relaxing, and nobody's beating him up. And MJF gets mad. No, he's got to go through so-and-so. I ain't wrestling. He's got to go through such and such guy. I ain't going to wrestle him. That might be something, but at least it would create some more hunger to see Bryan wrestle again. Like you said, I don't know. But nevertheless, and the rest of this program, Samoa Joe beat AR Fox for the Ring of Honor TV title. They did the Regal and MJF segment.
Did you watch that? You didn't watch Samoa Joe and AR Fox?
At this point, I was like, what the fuck?
Have you ever seen this guy before, AR Fox?
RM Wings? I guess they are. No, no, I've heard the name. I've not seen him. Don't care.
This is the first time I've seen him. I've heard the name for a long time. First time I've seen him. I kind of liked him. He kind of reminded me of the guy from Breakin'. Not Turbo, either Turbo or Ozone. I forget which one. But he had an interesting look.
Wait, what?
Remember the movie Breakin' and Breakin' 2? The two breakdancers?
No, I don't. And no, I didn't. And I had become an adult by the time breakdancing became a thing. So I was fortunately available to make my own decisions and never watch movies about that.
Wow.
Well, I'm sure he'll be good down the road. And Samoa Joe, it's always good. He's going to get a win. Now, you know, they bring him in. All right. They did some business with Ricky Starks and the other Page and Stokely. Matt Hardy is still there, but apparently now Stokely owns Hardy because they did an angle on YouTube or something.
Ugh.
Anna Jay wrestled Willow Nightingale, and Ruby Soho and Ty Melloconti somehow after that match got in a big rotten fight. And did you see the Jade Cargill segment?
Of course I did. I was hoping you did.
That's the other thing I wanted to bring up to you. Another party in the ring with balloons and confetti. And who was in the Kiera Hogan and what's the other young lady's name?
Kiera Hogan was fired last week. It's Layla Gray and Red Velvet.
Layla Gray and Red Velvet were in the ring with her. That's what because she fired what you said, right? And she has to do the interview. This entire company is. She's trying to say she's supporting the entire company and carrying the entire company on her back. And she said, this entire company is eating off me. And I got to be honest with you. Stacy and I saw that in New York about 10 or 12 years ago at that fucking high-priced strip club and sushi place. They do the naked sushi where they bring the naked girl out on the table and she's got the sushi all over her. And you use your chopsticks to take the sushi off the naked girl. So apparently all of AEW is eating sushi off of Jade Cargill. This stopped and started. It never stopped. There were stops and starts. There were fits and starts. But it kept going and going and going as Jane was praising herself and et cetera, her baddies. And then she started talking about Bow Wow. And instantly on the screen, on the video screen, a guy pops up with Bow Wow on his sweatshirt. I have heard that apparently on Twitter there is a rapper named Bow Wow. Was this indeed the aforementioned Bow Wow?
This is Bow Wow, formerly Lil Bow Wow when he was younger, and then he grew up and he got rid of the Lil and he just became Bow Wow. I believe he was, and I'm not joking, I believe he was discovered originally by Snoop Dogg, which is why there's a dog connotation to his name.
Snoop Dogg with Bow Wow.
Lil Bow Wow. He discovered Lil Bow Wow.
My God, that sounds like a fucking if Stan Lee had created a superhero combination while he was on LSD. So Snoop Dogg and Little Bow Wow, eh? I was like, I always wanted to have a wrestling champion named Jack Double Barrel Cannon and have his sidekick be a little midget named Cannonball. And he could roll the midget at his opponents.
Let me hear more about your EFED. I like this.
Anyway, so this video with Bow Wowie dog.
Just Bow Wow.
Bow Wowie. It looked like it was shot from a holding cell. All I could see was a silver wall with a bolt in it. And he mumbled something that I don't know what the fuck he said. And that was the end of the video, and they cut back to the ring, and all the girls just stood there and then just wandered off out of the ring, and they went to the break. So how is there a rivalry of some description, and what is the bone of contention, so to speak, between Bow Wow and Jade Cargill now?
I don't know. Obviously, Bow Wow for a while now has been teasing that he wants to get involved with wrestling, and AEW said, yes, please.
God damn it. Again. So some fucking street urchin somewhere, I want to get involved in wrestling. I want to get involved in fucking knocking over Fort Knox. Can somebody give me a ride down there and a shovel for the gold? Just because somebody wants to get involved in something doesn't mean they oughter.
You're going past so much stuff. There was a cake there for no reason. I mean, the celebration was big. They shot shit into the air. And then Jade talked about how upset she was with her baddies in the ring, while facially they no-sold all of that. Like they didn't give a shit what she was saying. And she had this ridiculous outfit, which, for the guys that like Jade's body, they're like, oh, look at her outfit. But it was a ridiculous outfit. And she's out there for this celebration that goes nowhere. Everyone's eating off her. She is mad at her people and they don't give a shit. And now it's either going to be an intergender match with Bow Wow, or Bow Wow has a female the way Shaq had Jade, or
now,
eventually they're going to be love interests. What is this?
You told me that Shaq didn't have Jade.
Not in that way. Will you stop being a dirty old man? In the way that she was on his side.
Well, on the side, back,
on his team, she was willing. You see, there's nothing I can say.
What?
No, I didn't say that. There's nothing I could say that you won't take down this road. But you get what I'm saying.
Anyway, and then finally, of course, number 3, the third in the best of 7 series with the Buckaroos and Twinkle Toes against the Bermuda Triangle. Again, they left that one till last and started it with 20 minutes left on the air. So for people who watched that and understand there were fewer of them than normal, they had to sit through 20 minutes of this horse shit with these fucking clowns. And they're going to, obviously, because of the graphic they've shown, their best of 7 series, unless they're false advertising the fucking last week, they've already announced here's all 7 dates for this best of 7 series. But they're running people off in record numbers now because it's like, we've discovered something that you don't want to watch, so we're going to do nothing else but that. What kind of fucking formula is that? Did you have have you heard about the ratings? Have you read about the ratings?
I have the ratings here. I was waiting to see if you had any more notes on the big Young Bucks or the big Elite.
Well, no,
Death Triangle Spectacular.
It's not serious. They don't actually intend for this. Is them. This is the Buckaroos and Twinkle Toes and all of their stooges, sycophants, and enablers masturbating themselves on national television to show Punk, hey, we're working every week. And we're out here doing our art because we won. And so we make fun of you. And we make fun of the people that like you. All those extra fans you brought that didn't want to see us because they tuned us out. And that's what they're doing. They're fucking rubbing it in Punk's face and Larry's face and all the regular fans' faces that thought that when they started getting big names, they would do as it was prescribed in the Bible, and they would throw off their childish ways and send the trampoline cowboys back to Cucamonga. But instead, no, they're Tony's friends. They're his E-Fed buddies. So they won, and now they're going to do this stuff every week, whether we want to see it or not, whether it all looks the same or not, whether it makes any sense or not, whether it gets anybody over or not. So let's talk about those numbers.
Let's talk about those numbers. They may be coming out to Kansas's Carry On My Wayward Son, but the fans viewing Dynamite are becoming like dust in the wind.
Whoa!
By the end of this show here.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Well, thank you very much. Well, before we get to the point of no return, I will continue on here with this.
Oh, well, wait, hold on here.
And those are the 3 Kansas songs I know. Jim, AEW Dynamite this past week had overall 870,000 viewers. Quarter 1, Hangman Adam Page and Jon Moxley having a confrontation, and the beginning of Danielson versus Harwood, 1,030,000 viewers.
So over 1 million people start out coming off the reruns of a several-year-old situation comedy.
Segment 2, which is the end of Danielson versus Harwood, and a promo from Ricky Starks, 877,000 viewers.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So once that the people watched the first 15 minutes, saw what was being advertised for the show, and got into the middle of one of the best wrestling matches they've had on this program in a while, it still wasn't enough to keep 150,000 of them.
Segment 3, which is Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta having a confrontation with the Jericho Appreciation Society.
That was a pre-tape in the back. I skipped through that.
As well as Samoa Joe versus AR Fox, 869,000 viewers.
So about 8,000 difference, about flat.
Segment 4, or quarter 4, the MJF and William Regal confrontation / promo / segment, 889,000 viewers.
So they got 20,000 of them back to see the explanation and revelation of why that this long-running group, Blackpool Combat Club, suddenly disintegrated and William Regal went to the dark side. MJF won the title. The explanation is going to be given, and we cracked 900,000. Jesus Christ.
Well, we're at 9 o'clock, quarter 5, which is the end of the MJF William Regal promo / brass knuckle incident, as well as Ricky Starks versus Ari Daivari, and Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker's promo, 869,000 viewers.
And at the top of the 9 o'clock hour, they lose another 30,000 people.
And quite frankly, if I told you to pick what they could put on that show to lose more viewers, it would have been this segment. Quarter 6, Anna Jay versus Willow Nightingale, the return of Ruby Soho, and Orange Cassidy having a confrontation with QT Marshall.
Now, thankfully, I missed that on the speed search entirely.
QT Marshall is still getting on this show. 838,000 viewers.
Oh! So they start at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. At the top of the 9 o'clock hour, they do 889 for quarter 4. Or going into the 9 o'clock hour, they do 889 for quarter 4. Top of the 9 o'clock hour, they lose 20,000 to 869. And by 9:15, they've lost 50,000 people from the top of the fucking hour? Okay.
Quarter 7. Jade Cargill's promo that you just reviewed, the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn promo, and the beginning of the Elite versus Death Triangle Match 3, 801,000 viewers.
Oh, and there went another 37,000 from the previous quarter.
And finally, quarter 8, the Elite versus the Death Triangle, The conclusion of the match, 792,000 viewers.
So 238,000 people from start to finish, or pretty much 25% of the audience said, fuck it. And the major loss came from the point in time where MJF and Regal parted ways to when the EVPs and the Bermuda Triangle spent 20 minutes out there getting in their own way. And that right there was around 100,000 people.
Again, Dax versus Danielson was a match that wouldn't appeal to you unless you're into really good matches. The women's segments every week run off viewers. And this week, look, back to back to back. Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker's promo was in quarter 5. Quarter 6 had Anna Jay versus Willow. Quarter 7 had Jade. 3 straight segments with women. And I hate to put down women's wrestling, but let's be honest about what's been happening with the ratings. They drive away the viewers. And then there's nothing, even if you're the biggest Young Bucks and Kenny Omega fan, there's nothing they do to bring new people in or bring people back. If you're predisposed to being a fan of that style of wrestling, you're probably already there and you're ready for it, but everyone else is getting ready for bed.
And, here's the one thing I'm seeing, and we'll close this thing up on AEW, but the one thing that I'm seeing is that they always have started with over 1 million people because that's their lead-in, but they used to keep the most percentage of those people through the first hour at least, and then the second hour would be the, Titanic, all hands off deck, and everybody be bailing out. But now they're bailing by 30 minutes into the show, or even earlier.
Other than MJF, what did you have to look forward to? Because they used to have CM Punk will be here. If they didn't open the show with CM Punk's music, you knew it was coming by 9 o'clock. There was a reason to hang on.
Yeah.
There's not, and I'm not saying that as a CM Punk fan, I'm just saying there aren't too many guys there right now that would give you a reason if you see a graphic at the bottom of the screen, this is coming up later in the show. Who's supposed to hold you?
Over 150,000 fucking people left from the time that they started the show until the second fucking quarter. That's insane.
What do you think the Elite do next week? Do they ask Tony to book him in the first hour? What do you think they're going to do to combat the fact that the reputation is now going around in that locker room and, of course, amongst fans that they are driving away viewers?
Well, I think the point that we can make most probably is if you see the Elite over the next week or two, and that best of 7 match come up at 8 o'clock or 8:15 or what earlier in the show, there's obviously no statistical reason to do that. So it's probably a cover our diminishing reputation move. Because especially now, when they've done this 3 times, and every time that match runs people off in the tens of thousands, if they were to put it on when they've got their biggest audience, that would be based on the statistical information that they've got already, the stupidest thing they could possibly do. So I expect to see that.
At what point does someone acknowledge that having the women's division featured so prominently on TV? I mean, they gave Anna Jay and Willow Nightingale a lot of time. When do people start acknowledging that this is a problem and this is driving away viewers?
When Tony decides to start acknowledging it. When Tony decides to start acknowledging anything. He doesn't want to hurt the girls' feelings. Well, Twinkle Toes has the Japanese girls so far up Tony's ass that he's tried to, apparently pare back on that a little bit because we're still seeing as many girls, but now they're all the American indie girls that can't work rather than the Japanese indie girls that can't work. But he doesn't want to hurt their feelings, and he doesn't want fans to be mad at him because the women's wrestling's supposed to be equal, even though they don't have enough good women's wrestlers to be equal. He doesn't want to do anything with the EVPs. That's obvious, or he would have jerked a knot in all of their tails when all this shit was going on with Punk before it blew up. But he didn't. He wouldn't do anything about it then because he's a coward. He doesn't like confrontation. He wants everybody to be his friend. If he gets his feelings hurt, then he'll just, send it to Megan or whatever.
Hey, he's also on the record saying that he thought it was a good idea to have a little bit of locker room dissension. It's good for what happens on camera. Remember, he did say that on the record.
Well, because again, he's heard some veterans say that when talking about the Vince McMahon's management style or whatever, keeps the guys against each other, keeps them on their edge. That's when you're in control. When you're in control of your company and your locker room and you've got an experienced staff that's in control as well, then yeah, you can, you can instigate some personal rivalries with the guys in the locker room to juice up the edge of the program. But when you have no control over anybody and they know that they can act out willy-nilly without anybody really doing anything about it, then you don't want that, because now you've just let the fucking inmates not only run the asylum, but you've handed them fucking sidearms. Remember when he told Andre, don't fucking punch Sammy Guevara in the face? Okay, I won't. What's the first thing he did when Sammy walked in the building? He was standing there to punch him in the fucking face. He said, I don't care what I told Tony Khan. I was going to punch him in the face.
And the word was Tony didn't want to let him go because he wanted to go. He wanted to get fired and go to WWE.
Fired. Yes, he said, I'll punch him and you can fire me. No, I'm not going to fire you. That's Tony Khan's actual quote was, if you punch the guy, I'm still not going to fire you. Okay, now I get to punch the guy I'm mad at. And all they're going to do is send me home where I want to go anyway. My God. It's all a factor, Brian. Everything's a factor.
Yes, it is.
Everything is a factor in what's going on. And you know what one of the biggest factors is, I think, in the skirmishes and the problems between these wrestlers? The biggest is they don't eat right. They are not eating well. They're on the go all the time. It's a holiday season. They're traveling from place to place. Tony's the only billionaire that they've suckered into giving him a job. Most of the rest of these guys have to go work for hot dogs on the weekends. They don't eat right. And when you don't eat right, not only are you damaging your body, you're damaging your mind, because food is fuel for the human body. And if you put the leaded gas in one of these fine new motors, well, it'll just gum up the works. And if you're too busy, or you're traveling, or you got the holidays, or you got kids, or you've got wrestlers in your locker room that are fighting with each other, you got to referee that. You don't have time to cook properly. You're just eating junk. Junk in and junk out. That's what I say. Crap in, crap out. That's exactly what's going to happen. But not with our friends at Factor. Because Factor is a ready-to-eat meal delivery service that shops and preps and cooks and delivers to your door so you can enjoy the chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals during the holidays minus the hassle. And they've got 34 meals a week. Holy mackerel, they're hungry son of a guns. You don't have to eat them all if you don't want to. Well, there's a week every February where you have to eat everything on your plate or they'll come to your house, but more on that later. But they've got Gourmet Plus. They've got Keto, Calorie Smart, Vegan and Veggie, add-ons like smoothies and juices and snacks and all that stuff. And especially did I mention the flavorful chef-crafted meals that you can enjoy guilt-free because you didn't steal them. Somebody else stole them. You weren't there. They're going to provide you with an alibi.
Nobody stole them. No, they're not going to provide you with any kind of alibi. Nobody stole them. They're legally obtained and chef-crafted wonderful meals.
Yes, and you can enjoy them guilt-free. I guess that means you didn't necessarily steal these meals. Whatever you steal, whatever you do out there in your daily life.
No.
Let's say you mistreat some senior citizens.
Let's not say that.
You steal some money from children's charities.
Or that.
Maybe you kick a cat. Then you come home and you sit down and you have one of these guilt-free meals and it takes all the guilt away. After you eat the Factor food, you feel just fine. You're ready to go out and fuck somebody else around the next day. Guilt-free meals.
Guilt-free, you won't feel any guilt about what you're ingesting, what you're bringing into your body. Your body is your temple, and you'll be supplying your temple with the best possible chef-crafted, good-tasting, delicious, and nutritious food.
Takes away all your guilt. Guilt you feel from pillaging and foraging about for other people's belongings and cheating people on business deals and parking in other people's preferred spots. Take away all your guilt. Not only do they offer the fast, simple solutions when you're too busy to cook, they help you stay on top of your goals. Protein plus, keto, you can stay on track with your diet. Factor has everything you need for a week of flavorful, nutritious eats. So right now, folks, I know this may be a mouthful, so jot it down. You're going to head to go.factor75.com/JCE60. That's go.factor, F-A-C-T-O-R, 75.com/JCE60 and use the code JCE60 to get 60% off your first box. See, that's why the 60's in there. And this is also a brain exercise. When you eat good food, it helps your memory. That's why this is the world's longest link. Go.factor75.com/JCE60. Use the code JCE60 at checkout to get 60% off your first box of Factor prepared meals that will be good for you and take away all of your guilt. No longer will you feel remorse for the horrible things you've done to other human beings in your life. Just eat some of this fine Factor food, and you'll be happy as a pig in poop. Factor.